So number 2 on the constructed response. You are given an equation and a graph. So the equation is very helpful, the graph a little bit helpful. The information says that the coordinates of A are 2C. And the coordinates of B are 6D. And what is the value of D over C? So looking at the coordinates, are C and D inputs or outputs? They're outputs, because in our coordinates, they go X and then Y. So basically, we need to figure out what the outputs are when the inputs are 2 and 6. And then the final part is to then divide them from each other. So since it gives us the equation, that makes it a lot easier to do that, and it's in function notation. So if 2 is my input, I need to plug that in everywhere that there is an X. And I'll use a calculator for that, as you should too. Once I get what that value is, that will be my value for C. And that can help me with this part of it, dividing them. Then we need to plug into the same equation. What else do I need to plug in? How do I figure out what D is? Which is, okay, see if we're paying attention. So outputs, inputs, give an equation. Inputs are your X. So then anywhere that there's an X, I'm going to replace with my given input. And that'll give me the output, which they're denoting with a D or a C, depending on what you plug in. So then from there, you take your calculator. Make sure you know how to use the calculator before you take the test tomorrow. If you ask me during the test, I really can't help you. You can still ask, and I might be able to tell you something, but I can't do it for you. Do you want me to get it? So there's our 2 values. Now remember that it wants you to put D over C. Miss Medina. Which one? So what's my value for D? Table 1, can you tell me what my value for D is? Okay, good. Because again, D is the output when you input 6, so make sure you're reading it right. And that's going to be divided by C, which table 2, what's my value for C? Okay, good. And then when you put that in your calculator, you get the final answer that it's asking for. Which gives me a nice even 81 for this answer. Remember, if you just give me the answer tomorrow and you don't show any work, you only get part of the points. Constructed response is all about explaining, making sure you're answering the question fully. The fact that these 3 questions alone are worth 50 points, like hopefully that should encourage you to not turn it in blank. I haven't had that issue so much this year, but just skipping a whole problem, especially on the constructed response, will pain you. So make sure you save enough time to do that and the online portion. All right, what other questions do we have from either part of the study guide? The puzzle piece or constructed response? Christina? All right. So from the online puzzle piece, because remember, you could get the answers from like your friends, I'm sure. But if you don't know how to do it tomorrow, like tomorrow's where it matters. Homework's only worth 10% of your grade. Doesn't mean that you should like just not do your homework. It's to help you prepare for the test. Tomorrow's like the Super Bowl for us. 150 points are going in. We only have 3 unit tests this semester, so they all need to be good. So for this one, which number pattern is a function that can be described by an exponential equation with a common factor of 4? You're going to select 3 answers. So exponential equations. What is our general formula for those? Christina? Okay. So, and it wants our common factor to be 4. Which of these variables is for the common factor? Table 5, can you tell me? Which of these variables is for the common factor? B. So know that if in this particular problem, it wants our common factor to be 4, that means that it should be the number attached to the exponent. That means that every time you are increasing, you are dividing, or not dividing, you are multiplying by 4, because factors are things that we multiply. So when you look at this, is -5 times 4 -1? So it's -5 times 4 -1. I'm gonna need eye contact. So then don't pick that one. Is 0 times 4 4? No, so then don't pick that one. These are trying to trick you by adding 4 each time. That's not the same thing as common factor. That's not an exponential function. That would be linear if it's adding the same amount each time. So we're looking for our exponential functions with a common factor of 4. If 1 times 4 4, is 4 times 4 is 16. Is 16 times 4 is 64. Is 64 times 4 is 56. So then that will be one of the answers. Sometimes they'll try to trick you. Sometimes they'll have the pattern and then they'll change it in the last few. So just make sure you read it all the way through, see that the pattern's consistent all the way through. But we still need to pick 2 more options. So is 20 times 4 5? We don't pick that one. Is 0.05 times 4 0.2? Is 0.2 times 4 0.8? Is 0.8 times 4 3.2? Is 3.2 times 4 12.8? So then pick that one. It's consistent all the way through, multiplied by 4 each time. Now we have a bunch of equations, but that's still okay. 1, it has to be an exponential function. Or 2, it has to be multiplying by 4 each time. So which of these equations has a common factor of 4? See if anyone else. Second to the bottom, good. 1, it already looks like our exponential function, a times b to the x. And 2, it's the one that has it attached to the exponent. You don't want to get confused with this last one, where 4 is the exponent. That's not the same thing. Okay. Question, comment, concern. The exponent should be a variable in these ones. David? Yes. Questions on other parts of this idea? Either part. No. Number 8. Okay, in order to predict future housing needs, the population of two towns, Appletown and Colwood, have been monitored and plotted on a graph for the past 4 years. Here are the results. You had to type in your answers. So how many people did the town of Colwood have initially? What part of my graph tells me my initial amount? The y-intercept, and we have 2 lines, so make sure you're reading the right one. For Colwood, how many did they have? 4,000, that's my y-intercept. So for this one, it is 4,000. I don't wanna have to scroll, but I know the next one says how many people did Appletown have initially? So look at that y-intercept, how many did they have? 8,000. So for that one, it'll be 8,000. The last question says, which town follows more of an exponential pattern? So, which one? Okay, good. And to get that answer not marked wrong, make sure you don't misspell it. It's there, like, copy it. The capitalization shouldn't matter, but don't put like any extra spaces or any extra words. Just type it in exactly how it is. I don't know for these that they're marking you off if you put commas or not, but just good habit, don't put a comma. Unless it's like a coordinate, don't put a comma. I will go back and check on the test, but it's a good habit. Good on this one? Good on other one? Or questions on other one? Micah? 11. Okay, so the ordered pairs shown on the table are generated by the function f of x. You need to select all that are true about f of x. So first, is it an exponential function? How can you tell if your table of values is exponential or not? Right. Okay, so compare it to our linear functions that would add the same amount each time. If I'm trying to see like how I can go from 0.16 to 0.4, I could try adding 0.24, but then it would have to be consistent throughout if that's the pattern, right? All the x's go up by 1 each time. So if it is linear, then it would have to add 0.24 each time. Is 0.24 plus 0.4 1? So it's not linear. That's where you kind of check, okay, is it exponential? To figure that out easily, you could take one of the y values, because the x's don't really matter, that's just like the years. You just kind of want to see that it's increasing by 1 in the x. But to see if there's something going on in the y's, you could try seeing if I take a value and divide it by its previous value, that would give you what's called a common factor, like what you're multiplying by. And if it's consistent throughout, if I'm consistently multiplying by 2.5 each time, then is it exponential? Well, first, is it multiplying by 2.5 each time? You don't have to think about it so hard. You can use a calculator. But 0.4 times 2.5 is 1. 1 times 2.5 is 2.5. So since that's the consistent pattern throughout, it is exponential. Exponential is when you have to multiply each time. And it's the same number each time. Good on that part? Okay, so then you have to select all that apply. There's 3 of them that basically ask you, it can be represented by this equation. What I would say is to plug in your x's into each equation and see which one gives you the same answers. I could also give you like a conceptual way too, but I feel like that would be the easiest. Since I have 3 equations, only one of them can be right, not all of them. So if this is my 3 equations, and I have some x and y values, I can try just plugging them in. So my first x value here is -2. Right now I'm plugging into this first equation. I'll write it down later, but like this is right. The second one, if I plug in a -2, I get that. On the last one, if I plug in a -2 for the x. This is what I get. So all I did was plug in. Does everyone see that? Here's my 3 equations. I plugged in one of my x values, and they happen to all give me different answers. Which one gives me the right answer? Would it be B, C, or E on my screen? Here, I'll write it next to it if that helps you. 2.5 to the x. This one, I plugged in 2.5 x plus 1. And 2.5 to the x and then plus 1. So which one gives me the y value that matches when I plug in -2? The first one, the one that's 2.5 to the x. That I think would be the easiest on the test for you. I can give you other explanations, but if you have 3 equations, it can only be one of them, not all. All right, so there's that. Last thing we need to check if it applies. When x increases by 1, f of x increases by a factor of 2.5. Is it multiplying 2.5 each time? So then you would pick that one. Is there anything else? Oh, y-intercept. How can I tell what my y-intercept is from a table? Riley? So by definition, your y-intercept is when x is 0. You didn't know that, please start knowing that. It'll make your life easier. So if they give you a table with x already there, then that means this is my y-intercept. My y-intercept is 0, 1, not 0, 0. Or in other words, y-intercept is where you start. And we always start when the time is 0. Right, so that's another thing too. It's not 0, 0 for this one. So don't take that. Good on that? Okay, be able to tell the difference between linear and exponential. Be able to figure out what equation matches a certain table of values. Other questions from any part? Do we all know number 1 on our constructive response? Is that easy? Okay. Any other questions? Lucina? Number 6. All right. The State Conservation Agency reports that there are currently 3,000 deer in the forest. The agency also reports that the deer population is increasing by 10% each year. We're going to write an equation. So on your test, you will also have to type in the equation. I'll probably still have to go back and see who wrote it right and the test just marked it wrong. But it'd be really nice if you just wrote it right and I didn't have to go back and look. But this is an exponential function because it's increasing 10% each year. That's a big giveaway. When it's a percent change, what equation should I refer to? Okay, what is the equation? Okay, good. So I'm not giving you any equations tomorrow, by the way. You would have to memorize this. Hopefully, since it's been basically one equation all unit. Hopefully it's easy. But A is for, what does A stand for? And what is my initial amount in this one? Good, so that's what I should have in my equation. 3,000, I wouldn't put a comma. It also says don't use commas. Parentheses, is it increasing or decreasing? Increasing, so it should be the 1 plus. If it were decreasing, it'd be 1 minus. And the R stands for growth rate as a decimal. So in that case, if this is my growth rate, 10%, what's my equivalent decimal? You don't know, is divide it by 100%. That'll cancel out the percent sign for 1, and it'll give you the right decimal. Right, what? 0.1 or 0.10, same difference. So there's that. And then it doesn't specify a certain time, except for it does say n years. So you need to put the exponent n, not x, not some other letter you want to pick. If it tells you to use a specific variable, please use it. Maybe then your stuff won't be marked wrong so frequently on Illuminate, but I do go back and check. I can't speak for like your other teachers. One other thing is that it should accept it if you type it in like this for the study guide. But get also in the habit of condensing this. 1 plus 0.1 is 1.1. So on your test, it'll be more of a setup like this, where it's already added or subtracted if it's good. Okay. Other questions? You might have time for one more, maybe 2 more, depending on how long. You don't ask now, you'll have to email me if you think of a question later, so.